Caleb Chapman. I produce bands, predominantly jazz groups, made up of all young musicians, ages 12 to 18. And in the process, you know, I'm a music educator as well. Greatest joy in what I do is watching these kids, these young musicians, from where they start. You know, when they usually start in 6th, 7th grade, honking notes out of the instrument, like, you know, just sounding terrible, looking awkward, to when they come out the gate at the other end. I mean, they're not only great musicians, which is nice, but they're fantastic people. And that is what makes this whole experience worthwhile for me. They are everything that you read about how music makes kids smarter and is good for their development. It's absolutely true. And these kids that I work with, they blow the roof off with their playing. But they're athletes. They are in service organizations. They carry, you know, 3.8 to 4.0 GPAs. We've had 100% of our graduates over the last 4 years get substantial college scholarships when they leave the program, and the minority of those scholarships are music. The majority are in academics, and these kids are changing the world. And we don't need millions and millions of jazz musicians. What we need is millions and millions of jazz advocates and fans. And I think that's what a program like ours does. Yeah, there are a few of the kids that have come through my program that you will definitely be hearing on the radio. You know, we've got alumni right now in Juilliard, in Berklee, in USC, in Miami, in North Texas. So you'll be hearing from them. But more importantly, there's hundreds of kids that have come through this program that are doctors and lawyers and business people, and they are going to be the ones buying records and buying concert tickets and funding the arts for the rest of their lives. And I think that's the most important thing as educators that we can do, is be growing audiences. So that's the greatest joy for me. See, I started when I was 15 in high school. My dad had lost his job, and so I was on the hook for all my own bills for my music lessons and things like that. So I started teaching private lessons while I was a sophomore or junior in high school, and continued doing that through college. I ended up moving out to Utah. I grew up in Derry, New Hampshire, about 50 minutes north of Boston, and came out to Utah to study with Dr. Ray Smith at BYU, as I'm a saxophone player, and continued teaching private saxophone lessons, and that kind of grew to a point where in 1999 I opened my first music school. At the time I had about 60 private students, and decided to open a school at the suggestion of my wife. Brought in a few friends that were teachers. That project grew to about 400 students in 2003. At that point I raised $4 million in venture capital and opened a very, very large music school. And grew that to about 120 employees and about 1,500 students coming through each week from ages 4 to 94. And it's always been a passion of mine, not just jazz education, but music education. My first love musically was pop music, and that developed to jazz, and that developed actually into classical music. And I actually thought at one point I was probably going to have I wanted a career as a classical conductor, as a symphony conductor. And kind of stumbling into teaching these jazz groups was really kind of an accident. After we started the school, a group of students approached me and said, "Hey, we want to do an after-school jazz band." And so we put it together, and they were junior high students, and then that developed into our high school honor band, which is the Crescent Super Band, and that was started in 2001. And since that time, they've really gone on to be recognized as one of the finest youth ensembles in the world, and we've been incredibly blessed to work with the greatest icons in jazz and play many of the greatest jazz festivals and venues in the world, the Montreux Jazz Festival, North Sea, Umbria, jazz clubs all over the country, Vitello's in Hollywood, Dizzy's in New York, we've been really, really lucky. I've been lucky to get to work with such talented kids and to get to work with the very greats of jazz music. My idols have, a lot of them continue to mentor me now, and many of them have recorded and played with the band. So it's really a dream come true. You probably think you've got a great job, but I've got the best job in the world. I am a huge fan of public school music education, and we need to do absolutely everything we can to keep music in the public schools. My program's an after-school program, but we require all the kids that participate to be in their school programs and active there. But it would, with that being said, it would be very difficult to do the type of program that we do and give the kids the experiences we have if I had to try to make that fit inside a public school system. Everything I do is very much against the grain, really, of traditional, not just music education, but jazz education. And I just feel it's really important that the success of our students is, I think, tied to a couple key factors. Number one, they get to work with guys like Jeff Coffin, Peter Erskine, Christian McBride, Randy Brecker. I mean, you name it. These guys, they get to work with these artists, these Grammy-winning jazz icons on a regular basis. Almost every month we've got somebody that comes in and doesn't just lecture them, but gets out their horn or sits back behind the drums and plays with them. And that kind of inspiration and motivation for these young musicians to want to be able to hang at that level is I think, one of the key ingredients. So access to great artists, number one. Number two is giving them performance opportunities. And I think just because of the luxury that we have of not being having to work around the scheduling of a facility in a school or something like that, and we're able to be out on tour, we're able to do concerts and performances on a regular basis, and there is a type of learning that happens on the bandstand that just doesn't happen in the classroom, and so that those performance opportunities are absolutely critical, and so we have that luxury of being able to perform a lot, and I think that's another reason that we're able to continue to have the success with these musicians that we do, and so again, I just feel really lucky that I'm in a position that we can offer these experiences to these musicians. And maybe the final piece is being able to actually record. I mean, these bands put out CDs every year. They're in the studio. They get the experience of preparing for the studio, the stress of doing that, and the expectation that they have to be playing perfectly to be able to go into the studio. And when they're shooting for that level of performance ability, to be able to play their music perfectly, you get good results, and the audience likes it, the musicians love it, and I don't know that there's any real secret sauce. We just ask them to do things that nobody else is asking them to do, and then sure enough, they deliver. I think the greatest challenge is that I'm committed to making sure these musicians that I work with, and by the way, I work on a regular basis with 150 musicians, me personally, in 9 different bands. And so that's a lot of groups that I have to make sure that on a regular basis they're playing for large audiences. I demand that they play at a professional level at a young age, and in return, what I want to make sure they get is an audience that's worthy of the work that they put into it. And the biggest challenge, to be honest, is finding people, the large numbers that I like to see at concerts, that are willing to go see a jazz concert. And it's not finding people willing to listen to the music, because once people get there, they love what they hear. The biggest obstacle for me is that a lot of people hear the word jazz and just instantly turn off the switch and say, oh, you know what, I don't like jazz. Well, what don't you like about jazz? Well, I don't know. I don't know that I've ever really heard it, but I don't like it. I just know that. And so, we find that, especially with the Crescent Super Band, which is our flagship group, we kind of leave the word jazz out of any marketing materials, we educate the audiences once they're there, but that's sad that that's where we're at, you know. And I'm hoping we can find a way as a community of artists and educators to be able to change that.